to put out in 5 seconds or
That's
2,
hard. It's really
4 or 5 minutes.
Start the chair.
Hey, let's go back here. I hate to take time from the class, so I'm going to move on here. So we have Aaron, and we have Moses, and Aaron is introduced as a brother. Thanks for pointing that out. But the Levite is the weird thing. Why is he called Aaron the Levite in this text? In other words, it sounds like it's only a tribal brother is what I'm trying to make you at least pay attention to. That's not proven, and I hope that you do make people prove things. So, but God says here to Moses, he himself is to speak to the people in your place. He will be your mouthpiece. You will be as a God. Take this staff. With this staff, you will perform the signs. Now, it says, at this point, I think, whether it's a plural you, it's not clear. It's like Moses will perform the signs. Later on, we get the signs performed. Moses performs some and Aaron performs some. So it's all very confusing. And if Moses can perform his own signs, what does he need Aaron to perform them for him? So that's the big question I have with this narrative. Why is Aaron needed? Sometimes Moses will be able to speak quite well, and other times have Aaron speaking. So the question is, who wants Aaron to speak? Well, I can tell you who would want Aaron to speak: the priests. Now, what do I mean? You're looking back in time. Envision a position where the priests have already been created, and they're descendants of someone they call Aaron, the brother of Moses. And they are the reigning caste in the temple system, and this is their claim. Well, they would like their ancestors to have an important part in the story. And this really is a very priestly book, Exodus. So you have to look backwards. You can't look forwards. And therefore, you have to say, what is the motive? And yet, do the traditions bear it up? Well, here's a tradition where he's called Aaron the Levite, as if he's not Moses' brother, except in the tribal sense. Moses' relative. Anyway, whatever. Moses goes back to his father-in-law Jethro. And Yahweh, this is Yahweh's text, long Yahweh's text, instructs him to return to Egypt for those who wanted you to kill you. I don't know if anyone really did want to kill him. I mean, who would dare challenge Pharaoh's son in Egypt, Pharaoh's sister's son, just because he got angry with a taskmaster? I can't imagine that really is a very credible situation. But again, this is my thing that you're saying maybe that I do too much, but my trying to look at what's real and what's a story element. The narrator's looking for a reason for all these things, so he tries to explain it in a simple way. Oh, well, he was wanted for murder, so we had to flee. I'm sure that's not. It's more complicated if it is if the story has got some reality to it anyway. Anyway, he takes his wife and his son, puts them on a donkey, and starts back. Takes the staff of God. By the way, I don't see Aaron around here. He's evaporated again. Why didn't he go back with Moses? How come Moses is going back himself with his wife? I mean, he just came out and then he went back. He can come out anytime he wants, you mean? These are the things you say, well, why are you thinking this? Because I want to show you how Aaron is being insinuated into the Moses story. And I don't think that it was an original element of the first version, whenever that may have been orally. Okay. And then finally he says things like, look, Pharaoh's not going to pay attention to your miracles, line 22, 23, so finally you're going to have to tell him you're going to kill his firstborn sons. That's just a preview there. Okay, 24. On the journey, Moses halted for the night. Yahweh still. The Lord came to meet him and tried to kill him. Now it's God trying to kill Moses. What? Why would God want to kill Moses? Zipporah, his wife, took up a flint and cut off her son's foreskin. And she touched the genitals or privy parts of Moses. You are a bridegroom of blood to me. And Yahweh let him live. And therefore she said bridegroom of blood on that account. Well, this is an old tradition, obviously. It has something to do with bridegroom of blood. I guess bridegroom of blood is when you have intercourse with the virgin, if any of them still exist in the universe. And there's blood like in those days, so that may be where that, but who knows how that got into this. This is a fragment, you see. 24 to 26 is not a full story. It's weird, it's just thrown in there again. It was on the table, it's chucked in. First of all, Moses, God didn't come to kill Moses probably. He probably came to kill the child. Because he's just talking about the firstborn being killed. And when he let him live, it's not Moses he let live, it's the child who he let live after they circumcised him. Child hadn't been circumcised, and that's what probably the original material. I don't have to be a genius to figure this out, even with the collapsed form of the material we have here. You see what I'm talking about? The material is not credible the way it's presented at the moment. But I would go further. Later on, suddenly Moses has two children, two sons. And we never got the birth of the second one. I think this is actually the birth of the second son here, which is not being told to us here, because suddenly Zipporah is not there anymore. She's been sent back to camp. I'm not sure if I've got this right, but we go forward here. The next material is about Aaron and Moses again. And I'm just trying to find where Zipporah appears again. Let's see. I don't know. She drops out of the story after that, and then she appears again. Well, I can't say, but at one point she's referred to again, and oh, here it is, chapter 18. She doesn't appear till chapter 18. So Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, 18 to, this is what, how many chapters later? 13 chapters later? Zipporah, after she'd been dismissed with her two sons. Suddenly in chapter 18, she's got two sons. No word about the birth of the second son. See, I mean, I don't know if you're following me with the curiosity that's going on here. I think that what you have here in that first fractured material, if you want to call it fractured, incomplete anyway, is probably material relating to the birth and circumcision of either one or both of the sons, but certainly the birth of the second son. And also God's angry because he's not circumcised or something like that, and he forced her to be circumcised, and they have an argument, he sends her away. Or something like that, because she'd been dismissed according to 18:3. He had sent her back, or dismissed her, or whatever. And so there must be more material that's been left out. And it looks like it was in that material here where we have this problem here. God wanting to kill somebody, and I'm sure he didn't want to kill Moses. But he's talking about killing the sons, the firstborn as it is in Egypt, maybe, but still after the birth of another son. See, one he called Gershom, 18:4. I was a stranger in a strange land, heard that. And the second one, Eliezer, because God has been my help and delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. Eliezer means God helps. El and Ezra is to help. Aaron's going to have another son, Eleazar, E-L-E-A-Z-E-R, which is almost the same as Eliezer in Hebrew. Aaron's going to have four sons. And so another quasi-overlap with Aaron in the name of the sons. Aaron and Moses have almost the exact, doesn't mean it couldn't be, but I'm saying it's odd overlap. I don't know, just keep it in mind. So here, Zipporah drops out. Clearly something happened there in the original narrative that has not been communicated in the tradition we have, either effectively or completely or comprehensively in a clear manner. Okay. And it's now that God says to Aaron, go into the wilderness to meet Moses. So it isn't really clear the sequence of events here is completely unclear and rather confused. So Aaron speaks for Moses here, and he performs the signs. That's the end of chapter 5. He performed the signs, line 31. Chapter 5, Moses and Aaron go to Pharaoh. Let's watch this now. And by the way, Pharaoh's around here, but he would have been 450 miles away from what I can tell from the situation. So maybe this isn't really Pharaoh, but he's presented as Pharaoh. Let my people go, so we can keep a feast in the wilderness to honor me. Who is Yahweh, Pharaoh says, that I should listen to him? I know nothing of Yahweh. I will not let Israel go. The God of the Hebrews has come to us, they replied. Give us leave to go. Now they're both speaking here. The king of Egypt said, Moses and Aaron, what do you mean by taking this people away from their work? Get back to your work. And there were a lot of them. And so we have all this about the foreman doubling the produce and the bricks and so on, and people having to work harder because of all this trouble. And that's what always happens in revolutionary situations, of course. And line 20, 21, you have made us hated by Pharaoh and put a sword into their hand to kill us. And Moses turns to Yahweh and says, look, you've got to help me. People are being treated harshly, and that's all that's happened. Okay, I'm going to show you my power, God says. Chapter 6, verse 1. Another appearance. I am Yahweh. To Abraham, Isaac, I was El Shaddai. There's that El Shaddai, powerful God, and so on and so forth. You can read this yourself. Then Yahweh said to Moses, line 10, go to Pharaoh, tell him, let the people of Israel leave. And Moses says to Yahweh face to face, look, they don't listen to me. And then Yahweh spoke to Moses and Aaron and ordered them to go to Pharaoh. Again, it's swinging back and forth. Sometimes it's Moses, sometimes it's Moses and Aaron. It's all spliced together. I can't sort it out, except my only question is, sometimes Moses is able to do it all himself, and other times he isn't. Why? Why do we think he can't always do it all himself? Because the priests don't want him to do it all himself, that's why. The priests want their representative in the process. That's my answer. I may not. Anyway, in the middle of all this, we get a genealogy. And what pops out of the genealogy? Okay, here are the sons of Levi. Notice that the sons of Levi, if you're just a Levitical brother, you're not a real brother. You're just a distant cousin. Because there are several generations, even according to this genealogy, down to Moses. And I'm sure there were probably more than that, if the genealogies are accurate anyway. So that's the problem of saying, Aaron the Levite is coming. Your brother, your tribal brother, Aaron the Levite. I believe that the tradition originally probably did have that in it, but I don't think it's his actual brother. Until we get the genealogies, then it becomes his actual brother. 20. Amram married Yocheved, his aunt, or his cousin, or whatever, who bore him Aaron and Moses. And Amram is another one of these fantastic genealogies. So now we know his mother's name and his father's name, and that his brother was Aaron. So we don't know it here till chapter 6:20. This is a different tradition. That's a priestly genealogy, obviously, put in there. Aaron married Elisheva, daughter of Aminadab, 23. And he has Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Itamar. So we don't have Gershon yet, but it's going to come in as one of the tribes. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Here it is, back here. Here's Gershon. Gershon was one of the descendants of Levi. So maybe I've got that a bit mixed up, Gershom and Gershon. But in any case, that is line 16. Gershon is one of the tribes of, one of the descendants, direct descendants of Levi. But he has a son, Eleazar. You see, Eleazar instead of Eliezer. So there's, it's the Eleazar that's the overlap there, not the Gershon even though the Gershon is some kind of repetition. Never mind. You're looking at genealogy yourself. I'm moving along. 29. Yahweh spoke to Moses. Tell Pharaoh, I am slow of speech. Why should he listen to you? Look, I'm going to make you Pharaoh's God, and your brother to be your prophet. So that goes on. Line 7. Moses was 80, and Aaron was 83 when they went in to see. So the detail man is back in the picture here, who knows all the ages and so on. We didn't hear that originally. Anyway, in line 11, Aaron threw down the staff, and it turned into a serpent. And then the magicians of the Pharaoh, line 12, throw down their staffs. So it's Aaron's staff that swallows up their staff. Okay, so I told you that miracle is possible in terms of magic in those areas. More of this repetition. Line 16. Say to him, Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, has sent me. Let my people go to offer me worship in the wilderness. We've heard that around 10 times now. Yahweh said to Moses, say this to Aaron, line 19, take your staff, stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt. And this is where everything is turned to blood. And there's something about, as I said in this discussion I heard recently about the algae or something, this red, maybe it's like the red thing we get in the water here. It's been recently very heavy red, whatever it's called, out in the ocean here. That the fish have actually flourished on, but it's a kind of a species of algae. In any case, the Egyptians were hiding from all this. They dug holes along the banks of the river in search of drinking water. 26, beginning of 8, overlap in numbering here because it's probably 2 columns. Go to Pharaoh, say to him, this is Yahweh's message, let my people go. We have frogs. 8:1, Yahweh said to Moses, say this to Aaron, stretch out your hand, your staff, over the rivers, make the frogs swim over the land. So he does this, and the frogs come. Pharaoh summoned Moses and Aaron, and tell Yahweh to rid me of these frogs, and I will let the people go. And anyway, these discussions go on. You can read all this. I don't need to. What I'm looking for is where Moses starts to act alone, and then the question I will have is why he needed Aaron. When Moses and Aaron had gone from Pharaoh's presence, Moses pleaded with Yahweh about the frogs, and he granted Moses' prayer. And then, as soon as he was relieved, line 15, Pharaoh wasn't going to pay attention to his previous promises. So they sent mosquitoes. And the same thing goes on. This is ritualized because the Jews celebrate this in their Passover meal now. So this goes all the way up till chapter 9, the 5th plague, the livestock. And line 8, we get there, Moses says to, Yahweh said to Moses and Aaron, the 6th plague boils. Line 13, he only says it to Moses. And then finally line 22, what I was trying to get to. Yahweh said to Moses, stretch out your hand towards heaven so that a whole land will be covered in heavy rain and lightning and hail. And Moses takes the staff and the lightning comes down and it rains all over Egypt. So there he does it without Aaron. So why do we need Aaron? If Moses can do it without him, why do we need him? Anyway, line 32. We're getting to the problem of the wheat and the crops that were not destroyed. Moses left Pharaoh, went out of the city, stretched out his hands, and the hail stopped, and it rained no longer. By the way, starting the hail and stopping the hail, Elijah supposedly does that. And in the letter of James, that miracle is referred to. So Moses and Elijah have a sort of connection on that rain stopping and starting. In any case, chapter 10. Moses and Aaron go to Pharaoh, and same thing again. Same threats and so on. And again, Pharaoh says, okay. Then line 12, Yahweh said to Moses, stretch out your hand on the land of Egypt, bring on the locusts. And Moses stretched his staff, there it is, he's doing it again alone, line 13. So, if he does it alone, what does he need Aaron sometimes, and if he can do it himself? And that's the question I have. What is going on in this text? And again, I can't give you the final answer. Line 21. Line 16, it's Moses and Aaron again. Line 21, it's only Moses. Bring darkness. So he stretched out his hands and there was darkness everywhere. So Moses is doing it alone. So Pharaoh summoned Moses again. Line 24, go, take your herds, get out of here. We can't have you here anymore. Get out of my sight. So it's Moses alone with Pharaoh. They're talking quite well together. Don't need any mouthpiece here. Okay, one more disaster, line 11. Yahweh says to Moses, alone. And finally, line 4, Moses says, this is Yahweh's message. All the firstborn are going to die. And he's quite eloquent, and he doesn't need a mouthpiece. So I'm asking you, how come sometimes he needs a mouthpiece and sometimes he doesn't? You may have an adequate answer. I don't have one. I'm just posing the question. My answer is that Aaron is being insinuated into Moses' miracles. Now, that may have been always the case, but I think originally Moses was probably functioning without Aaron. Now, in the stories I'm talking about, I don't know the real history, but a final point I would make, at the end of Exodus, we get a lot of anti-Aaron material. People who don't like Aaron. What's the main anti-Aaron material we get at the end of Exodus? Who builds the golden calf? Aaron. And when the Levites go through the town and get their appointment and kill everybody, I assume you're reading this before me, we're just going over it again. The Levites go through the town just like they went through, by the way, Shechem earlier over the circumcision, over the rape of their sister and the circumcision that they'd inflicted upon the Shechemites. The Levites go through and win honor now because they kill everyone in the camp who has been worshiping the God that Aaron constructed. And I'll show you in that episode that Aaron should have been cut off at that point according to the narrator of that story. Because at one point it says, you know, anyone who's done this should be cut off. And that should include Aaron. So we get pro-Aaron material, anti-Aaron material in Exodus. People who are for the Aaronite priesthood, people who are not for the Aaronite priesthood.
So is the golden calf and the Aaronite priesthood being related to the two golden calves of the Israelite?
Well, we're not there yet. I'm just showing. I just wait till we get there. I don't think there's no point trying to get ahead of it. So I just want to show you why you're doing this. You might ask me. I'm doing it because I already know the answer. Haven't read the whole book, where you guys are maybe not through the whole book, or maybe you haven't read it carefully. But the question that comes out is, you say, well, there's no reason why you should think that Aaron is not a hero in this book. Yes, there is, because there's anti-Aaron material in this book. On the whole, it's a pro-Aaron book because it's all about his investiture of priests, what they're to wear, what their garments are supposed to be. And in fact, that's repeated twice, not once, but twice. And the pretense of the book is that it's repeated twice because Moses broke the stones the first time. He had to go up and get them again because of the golden calf. But obviously, all this wasn't written on the stones. So again, it's two different text lines that have been just overlapped and probably stitched together there. But in any case, according to the story, it's repeated twice. Obviously, I'm not sure you've read this whole book. I get the impression a lot of you haven't, because you don't seem to be with me on what's coming. Anyway, that's the reason I'm trying to emphasize this. Let's go along here. Chapter 12. It's Moses and Aaron again. This is the first month of your year. So the Hebrew year begins in April, the Passover time. And of course, Passover, as you know, is Easter time. And the Jewish word for Passover is Pesach. In all the European countries, the word is retained for Easter. Only in Germanic English languages is Easter the word. What's the Spanish word for Easter? Pascua, Pesach. And in East Scandinavia, it's Fesik, Pesach. And in Italian, it's Pasqua. And in French, it's Pâques, and so on. Only Easter comes from a start date. Has to do with the goddess's start date. It's of course nothing whatever to do with Jesus, and it's a Germanic Anglo translation of what it is, but Easter is Passover with a new interpretation, and it's the beginning of April period, it's the spring, the renewal period, and so on. But I don't need to go into all that with you. I'm just telling you that in case you don't know it, Passover and Easter are the same thing. It's just that it's been reinterpreted into the New Testament in the way we are familiar with it, and called in English Easter, when in fact in all Latin countries and Greek and everything it's still Pesach, Pascha, Fessig as the Scandinavians call it. I don't know the German word for Easter.
Osterisch?
Yeah, that's maybe, so that's where they get it from, the start day origin. Anyway, leave that aside. This is the Passover, and that's what this whole thing has been about, to get the ceremony for Passover, the first month of the year. On the 10th day, every man shall take an animal, and you'll have this sacrifice, and the blood should not be eaten, 2 doorposts and the lintel. You put the blood on the doorposts and so on. Eat unleavened and bitter herbs. It's all part of the commemoration, which obviously is a very traditional thing, even by the time this is written. So even when this is written, the festival is already deeply entrenched, and this is explaining the festival. Just like the pilgrimage to northern Spain, where the pilgrim route that's famous to Santiago de Compostela. The people have sandals and a staff, and they stop at different rest sites. If you know the famous pilgrimage that's still celebrated today in northern Spain, this is already gone. This kind of thing has already been going on here. Everyone is supposed to girdle their waist, put sandals on their feet, a staff in their hand, and so on. So it's part of this pilgrimage festivity commemorating the Exodus. I think the Exodus has a real origin, regardless of what scholars say otherwise. Some scholars know. And I will pass over your doorpost, line 13, when I see the blood. No work is to be done, line 17. It's the Feast of the Unleavened Bread, and you'll do that from age to age, line 18. It's an irrevocable ordinance. So again, anyone who reads the Bible, this ordinance is not irrevocable. It's not revocable. So again, whether it's to be reinterpretable, I don't know. Oh, here it is, line 40. This is the time the sons of Israel spent in Egypt, 430 years. And line 35. The sons of Israel did as Moses had told them and plundered the Egyptians for silver, ornaments, and gold and clothing. And God had given them such prestige that the people gave them what they asked for. So here it is, plundering the Egyptians when they go out, and I think that's because later they're going to need to construct the ark. Maybe we should pass around another attendance sheet now to see who the escapees were. How about that? I'll give the people credit to, here, let's do, we'll call this 10/19/05, after the escape for the faithful. Here, let's pass that one around now. Okay, so there's the 430 years I was telling you about. If you see it, it's on line 41. And again, there's a second notice about plundering the Egyptians, line 35. More about the Passover. No alien, but a slave bought for money. You have to circumcise him first, though. This is why you have the argument in early Christianity, do you have to circumcise him? The James party says you do, the Paul party says you don't. Any Hebrew in Palestine would say, before you're entitled to the promises of the covenant, you have to come in under the covenant and sign, whether I don't care if people circumcise or don't circumcise, it's no business of mine, but if you're going to be part of the tradition, the sign of the covenant is circumcision. So if you want the promises of the covenant, you can't come in and have the promises according to the covenant and then claim that these other things. If you want to follow a Greco-Hellenistic mystery cult, which is fine, and I don't see anything wrong with a Greco-Hellenistic, but you shouldn't plug a Greco-Hellenistic mystery cult into the Moses events, which is what's been done. And I don't feel that that is fair, and the history of it has been terribly tragic for both sides. Certainly Christianity is a beautiful religion, and there's nothing wrong with the kind of practices that it follows, and so on and so forth. But the way it's treated its Hebrew origins has been atrocious and has led to holocausts. And it's very sad, in my view, that that should be the case. If you don't like the tradition out of which you come, don't tack it on to that tradition, is what my response would be. No one's listening to me on this subject. But unfortunately, we have to reckon with these terrible things that have been done. And I don't know the answer, but I do know that in the Pauline corpus, there's tremendous hatred. For someone who's preaching love, there's tremendous hatred. And it all goes back to this issue here, the circumcision problem. And the Old Testament's very clear about this. So my response to Paul would be, okay, if you don't want to deal with this issue, don't use the Old Testament. But he wants to use the Old Testament. He wants to pick and choose. He wants to take what he likes and throw away what he doesn't want. But I don't think that's, I don't think it's fair to the literature of the people that you're dealing with. They produce all these other problems. You say, well, he's entitled to do that. Well, if you read what he does, he isn't entitled to do that, because what he's really doing is what's called allegorical interpretation of Scripture. It was instituted in Egypt by Philo of Alexandria, who I think he knows. And Philo wanted to interpret everything allegorically. And he's got books and books and books that have survived on this subject of the allegorical interpretation of the Old Testament. All Paul is doing it with the Jesus events. And he's allegorizing all of that kind of thing. So I'll give you an example of what he allegorizes. I've told you this before. In Galatians, he allegorizes the issue of the fact that there were two sons. There were two sons of Abraham, Ishmael and Isaac. And he wants to claim that Christians are the sons of Sarah, the freeborn woman, as he puts it in Galatians 4. Freeborn, why? Because they're free of the law, free of the Mosaic law. The new Christians are free of the Mosaic law. So he takes the word free and allegorizes it. Then he takes the word slave, Hagar's son, she's the slave woman, and then he takes a passage from Genesis, throw out the slave woman that Sarah says, and he says, that's what you should do. That's what, therefore, throw out the slave woman. But the slave woman in his allegory is slavery to the law of Moses and Sinai. And he says, I think it's either Moses or Sinai is Hagar. Yeah, Moses or Sinai is a Hagar, and the Jews are the sons of Hagar. Now, look, you can do it. That's great, but that's not fair to the material that you're dealing with. We've just dealt with the material. It's fair in an allegorical way, if you can do anything allegorically that you want. I'll give you another example of what he does. In Corinthians, he has Moses in the tent of meeting, where I've told you this, where his face is irradiated. These are my two favorite examples, but he does hundreds of things like this. He's a very slippery sort of character where exegesis goes in this regard. And he's in the tent of meeting, and Moses' face is irradiated, like the story here, because he's in the presence of God, and he puts a veil over his face so the people won't be burned by contact with him. When he comes out, he's so irradiated. Okay, it's a legend. I'm not saying it's a real story, but in any case, Paul says, oh yes, allegorizing it, the reason he put a veil over his face is he didn't want the people to see that the light of the law had gone out. In other words, Moses is a charlatan who's cheating the people and doesn't want them to know that the light of the law has gone out because Jesus Christ has been born. Well, you know, all that is all very facile exegesis. It flies in places where people don't know anything about Scripture and only listen to the, sermonizer or the person who's expounding it in his own tendentious way, but it's not what the original text said in any way, shape, or form. So that's what I mean. If you don't like the original text, don't use it. But it's not fair to use it unfairly. That's what I'm saying. You don't want to circumcise, fine, don't circumcise. But don't then claim that you're heir to the covenant that says the covenant, the sign of the covenant is a circumcision. You follow me? That's what bothers me. I don't care if a person's circumcised. I don't care if a person eats clean or kosher foods or doesn't eat kosher food. That's all well and good, but don't say you're using a tradition when you're not. That is, don't take bits of it throughout the rest. That's my issue. I'm happy with Christianity, and I'm happy it's a beautiful religion, but it shouldn't take stuff that it claims to be part of its heritage and just throw it away. When it says here, this is a ceremony in perpetuity. You can't take a passage and say, oh, it's not a perpetuity anymore. Then you're not operating within the text. Okay, leave it at that. You can deal with it. The other side we've heard for 2,000 years, so I'm not worried the other side isn't going to be heard. You know what the normal side of this whole thing is, and you can take or leave it. But here it's very clear. Everyone has to be circumcised. You can't eat. Oh, by the way, the New Testament takes us, don't break a bone in it. So then when Jesus is on the cross, they apply this passage, a bone shall not be broken in it, therefore don't break the bones of his legs. In other words, they take all these things out of context here, apply it to other things, and then miss the context, which is circumcision. So you just take one thing out and forget the rest. That's what I'm saying is really weird. And most people, they never go back and check on the scriptural passages. But since I'm doing the scriptural passage, you see the context. Every male must be circumcised over and over and over again. Non-native born and native born. No uncircumcised person may take part in this. But it applies to the stranger and the resident among them. It's harsh, I agree. I'm not advocating it. I don't say people should be part of this. But don't take part of it throughout the rest. If you feel that you're entitled to do that with other people's culture, that's a matter of something to decide for yourself. Never mind. You always said to Moses, consecrate all the firstborn to me, and so on and so forth. Keep this day, line 3, as a remembrance to me, how the power I shown when I brought you out of slavery, and that's real slavery, not slavery to the law as Paul wants to make it out to be. That's slavery in Egypt, not slavery to the law of Moses. This book is for the law of Moses, not against the law of Moses. Again, I don't observe the law of Moses, I have to tell you, so don't worry. I have no axe to grind for the law of Moses. I just have an axe to grind for respecting literature in its entirety and not, chopping it to pieces and taking the parts that you like, throwing out the other stuff. Yeah.
Could it be considered as a changing revelation, just as Muhammad had changed the prayer from Jerusalem?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, Paul's doing whatever he likes. We'll do that in a historical Jesus class. Next year I'm going to do a historical Jesus class. We'll deal with that. But the point is that what I'm trying to, sure, it's a change, and Paul is doing whatever he wants. But do we think that, is it, can you take from the literature part of it and then do away with the other part of it because it's inconvenient to you? That's the only question I'm asking.
Isn't that what Muhammad did?
Well, I'm not saying Muhammad is legitimate in what he's doing. Yes, I've already compared Paul and Muhammad are two sides of the same coin. They're using exactly the same technique. As you see, we showed that in the Islam class.
Right.
Muhammad does exactly what Paul does in terms of the Abraham figure. But that's another thing. I have to move along, but anyway, just you think about that. Don't feel you need to accept my view. My view is out there just to challenge you to think about these things, because I think that nobody ever challenges anyone to think about these things. And it's people should be honest about these things. If you have a problem with it, you should say it. And that's what I'm trying to do, because I don't have much time teaching and left. And I feel that you should say it. And students, to me, are the best way to communicate with. They don't have to accept what you say, and they shouldn't. But at least you challenge them to think about that. They go home, and then 6 months from now, a year from now, they'll ponder about it and decide what is correct, what is just, what is the righteous thing to do. And they'll be able to talk to a priest or a rabbi or an imam. I hope my Islamic students can talk to their imams. You see, I don't observe the rabbinical thing. I'm not going to, there's no conversion here.
Yeah,
Anyone who's with it is part of it. And rabbis who want to go out and say, oh, we have to do this, that, and the other thing, that's all their own invention. You know, the book presents it very clearly. Anyone who's part of it is part of it. And the patriarchs all marry foreign women all the time anyway, and so on and so forth. Anyway, I'll just leave that aside. Those are asides, but I have to move along. Anyway, so God takes them out with His power. And more about, these are now ceremonial things. Exodus has turned into a ceremonial book by this time. The history is secondary, the ceremony is primary. Like we're dealing with line 12, anything from the issues of the womb, firstborn of anything belongs to God, you know. So you have to take it up to the temple, and even you have to dedicate your firstborn sons in some way to God. Anyway, so when Pharaoh had let them go, they didn't take the road, line 17, to the land of the Philistines. Now, the land of the Philistines, again, an anachronism, because even at this time, it doesn't seem like the Philistines were there yet, and at least not in force. Depends if this is after, the Philistines come in around 1200 BC. So, since this is written later, people might call it that because that's what it becomes. Go to the Sea of Reeds. Notice line 19, it's the Red Sea. It's not the Red Sea, it's Yam Suf. Yam Suf is the Sea of Reeds. It's that marshland like the Delta area. So again, you could have currents there, you could have tides. I don't know if you've been to Mont Saint-Michel in France, where the tide comes in and the road is covered, and then later the tide goes out and you can drive out to it. I mean, it's quite possible in this area you could have tides coming in and out, and therefore the Egyptian army or pursuers could have been caught in the change of tides. You wouldn't have to have two walls of water on either side, as this is portrayed. If it's going to be two walls of water on either side, it's a kind of memory of theorem, perhaps, of the tidal wave situation. But we've seen Cecil B. DeMille, and that's how it's portrayed here, two walls of water on either side. But you see, it isn't the Red Sea. It's the Yam Suf line. You see that? The Sea of Reeds. It's not the Red Sea that they're crossing. So we get all these different, and God goes beyond, in front of them by day as a pillar of cloud, and at night a pillar of fire to give them light. So this is like a rear guard and an advance guard, a pillar of cloud by night and a pillar of fire by day. Again, all these are supernatural elements. I'm not going to comment on them. You can decide what you want to make of them. It's like the heavenly host in a way, changes its station. Look at here, line 19. The pillar of cloud changed station from the front to the rear of them and remained there. So the pillar of cloud is like an angelic host changing its battle order to the rear. And this is going to be the prelude to the parting of the Red Sea, as everyone knows it. So finally Pharaoh changes his mind and sends 600, line 7, of his best chariots out after them. Again, I don't know if Pharaoh had the communications to do this, given the distances involved where Pharaoh would have been and where the Hebrews were. So that's another thing you must think about when you want to try to historicize this episode. And the people start complaining, line 12, against Moses. We would rather have stayed and worked with the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. And Moses says, stand firm. Yahweh will do the fighting. He will save you. He will fight for you. All you have to do is sit and do nothing. Just shut up. And then Yahweh said to Moses, raise your staff. Here's the biggie. And who's doing it? Moses. Well, Aaron. Hey, where are you, Aaron? I don't see you. Moses stretched out his hand, line 21, just like he did with the hail and all the other things. So Moses is quite capable of operating on his own. He doesn't need any helper or mouthpiece. And that's a pretense of the story to give the priests more prestige in this, I'm afraid. But that's just my explanation. If you have a better one, that's fine. I'm not trying to sound the only one. So it is the angel of God, line 19, who is in the front, marching like an army, and then moves to the rear, like a rear guard, and a pillar of fire and a pillar of cloud, the angel of God. And Moses, line 21, stretched out his hand, and he drove the sea back with a strong easterly wind. Well, there you go. You see, it could be just the easterly wind that did it. And it's just a shallow area of the Sea of Reeds, not a huge, waterway. But as the story puts it, walls of water to the right and to the left. Well, that makes it very dramatic, and that's what most people believe, and that's what they see in the movies. But whether that actually is a credible occurrence, you'll have to decide. And then the Egyptians cry out, line 25, look, Yahweh is fighting for them against the Egyptians. Look, the Egyptians know the name of the Hebrew God. It's the first I knew that the Egyptians could know the name of the Hebrew God. You see, and then we can do that. Egyptians know his name, which is supposed to be a secret name. Anyway, but I guess they got all killed in any case. The fleeing Egyptians marched right into the sea as it came back, and Yahweh overthrew the Egyptians in the middle of the sea. And the sons of Egypt marched through on dry ground, walls of water to the right and left of them, line 30. This is the dramatic story. But I love this little thing at the end. And Israel performed Israel witnessed the great act. Now, after Miriam's song, I think that at one point it says, and they saw the bodies of the Egyptians in the water lying there the next morning. Now, that could have happened, you see, if there was a situation of tides and a pursuing group of people who got caught in the tides, and then the people woke up in the morning and saw the bodies lying there and were amazed. Then the story could have grown up like we have it here. So I think that element of seeing the body, I don't know where that is, but I think you'll see it momentarily. Okay, so it was then that Moses and the sons of Israel sang this, oh, here it is, line 30. Yahweh rescued Israel, and Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. That is the point, and they witnessed, so they saw the bodies. They could have woke up the next morning, saw them lying dead on the shore, and were amazed at what they saw. It's just one explanation. I'm not saying that's satisfactory, but I think that's how a story can get started. That is probably a truthful element. If there was such a thing, and if in fact they remembered it, the most truthful element in it is seeing the bodies lying there and then trying to explain the reason. And this is the explanation the poets present. I think simpler is the tide shifted, but that's not enough to impress people, I don't think. Now, here is the song, which is obviously an old song, presented in 15:1. Yahweh I sing, he's covered himself in glory. Horse and rider is he thrown into the sea. Yah is my salvation. He is my song. He is my strength. I praise him. I extol him. Yahweh is a warrior. Yahweh is his name. So this is an old celebrative song. That probably this is what they originally even have to work with. It's like you would know a Bruce Springsteen song or a Bob Dylan song or a Beatles song. And then 100 years later, you put the flesh on it. Oh, blowing in the wind. Oh, okay, let's write the narrative about blowing in the wind. Let's tell you what happened, why I wrote Blowing in the Wind. Well, there were demonstrations and it was all blowing in the wind at that time and so on and so forth. Of course, that's not what he just said on his recent interview. He said he just made it all up out of whole cloth and he didn't give a fig about the demonstrations or anything else, which I believe. I don't think he cared one hoot about the war or not the war or anything else. He just did what was going at the time and took advantage of it. That's the kind of guy he was. And he loved it. And he managed to stay on. The others got all bogged down in their protests, and he just kept dancing from one thing to the other, and he became the great musician of the age for that reason. They're doing a two-part biography of him with his commentary. Who's that director has done it? The one who did Malcolm X, the one who did Gangs of New York. No, that isn't Spike Lee, it's the other guy. The one who did Gangs of New York, I'm thinking about. Scorsese's done it, yeah. It's on public television, 2 hours, 4 hours. 2-part biography with Bob Dylan talking and music and his memories and so on, and putting in clips from the history of the time. And he says all these things. Give it a damn. He never cared. He only wanted the money first place. He wanted to buy a house. He said, so it's a farm. That was and then they have Joan Baez saying, yeah, Bobby really wasn't as interested as we were, you know. And I tried to get him to go on demonstrations, but he didn't want to. Yeah, that's why he survived and she didn't, because he kept on dancing and she got bogged down in political agitation. So, plus he could write music. That's a big advantage. Lots of people can sing, but not everyone can write a song. So anyway, he lets it. He says it all. If you're interested, you should watch that. It's on public television. I'm sure they'll replay it on the Orange County one. They've had it on the Los Angeles one, KCET. I'm sure they'll put it on the Orange County. It's 4 hours. Anyway, you can also buy it from public television website. It's 4 hours by Scorsese and Bob Dylan interviews. Anyway, here's the song about this. Grace led you people out. By grace, you see, there's amazing grace. Whether it's the actual Hebrew, I don't know. By grace, you led the people out. By grace, well, how's amazing grace go? By grace I am saved, and so on. In any case, Pang sees the inhabitants of Philistine. Edom's chieftain are dismayed. Moab falls to trembling. Well, we're at a later period. Because these are all the enemies in the Davidic period here. Edom, Moab, Canaan, Philistines. These are all the Davidic period. So everything in this song has a Davidic ambience there. It's not the Moses 1400 BC period. Yahweh is going to bring you to your place of your own dwelling that he prepared with your own hands. Well, it's also about the Davidic temple. It's also about the line 17, it's about the Davidic temple. So this song is a Davidic period song. I can tell from what it talks about. And look who's introduced for the first time. Miriam the prophetess, Aaron's sister. Notice, it doesn't say Moses' brother. This is that narrative that has Aaron the Levite and Miriam his sister, but nothing about their relationship to Moses. I think that that's the later work of the genealogists that melds Miriam and Aaron to Moses. But even the genealogists, I don't think, ever mentioned Miriam. And the early stories about Moses' birth and being drawn from the river and so on don't give the name of his sister. So if those narratives knew that Miriam was his sister, they would have told him. I think. So these are problems. I don't have the answer, but there are certain problems. So notice, now most people don't pay attention to this, but Miriam is only called a sister in line 20 of chapter 15. So by 16, we're in the wilderness. And I'll just pick one more to let you go early here. Jethro comes in 18. I'm going to come back over this next time, and brings his wife and 2 sons. No birth of the first son. And I said that probably has to do with that earlier issue about your bloody bridegroom to me and so on. And the revelation of the commandments in chapter 20. And then look here. All the things associated with it. Chapter 21. Slaves, homicide, blows, wounds, animals. 22. Compensation offenses, violation of virgins, other religious laws, first fruits, 23, justice, sabbatical year, great feasts. I've got titles here, that's how I got all this here. And then other promises. And then that's cut off by the golden calf episode in at the end of 24. We will come back to that. But anyway, it's portrayed that he broke the stones, and then he goes back up the mountain again. And now we have it again, I think. Isn't that what's being portrayed here? Let me see if I've got it right here. Maybe I don't have it right. No, that's not till 32. He goes up again. I guess that isn't the golden calf yet. But now we're getting the priesthood here. Contribution to the sanctuary, furnishings of the ark, lampstand, 26, tabernacle fabrics, framework, veil, 27, altar, court, holocaust, 28, priestly vestments, ephod, pectoral, judgment, robe, diadem, consecration of Aaron, 29. So Aaron gets consecrated. All this is priestly, 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 priestly. That's why Aaron is shoved into the narrative. 30 bronze basins, chrisms, incense, craftsmen, 31, 32. At the end of 31, when he finished speaking, he inscribed everything on the testimony in Mount Sinai, line 18. I'll come back to this next time. End of that episode. New episode, golden calf. Anti-Aaron episode. And then Moses is so angry that he's portrayed as breaking the tablets. So anyway, they come down and there's this whole problem again, and more material. I'll get it to you next time, more detail. I just want to show you how this is constructed. 35. So once again, the materials, the craftsmen, the tabernacle, the framework, the veil, the ark, the offering, the lampstand, the altar, the holocaust, the bronze basin, the amount of metal, the vestments of the high priest, the pectoral of judgment, the robe, and so on and so forth. So all repeated a second time. And the ostensible reason is that he broke the first one. Well, but they remember both. They had both records of both. So I don't understand the reason for the double up here, except the narrator says, well, he knows both. He knows the first and the second. But it's all repeated again. We'll see. In the middle is the famous golden calf episode. But you will see that the whole end of this book is priestly. Everything is to do with Aaron, his consecration, everything else. So Aaron is, but in the middle of it all is material where Moses is portrayed as saying that the people who constructed this golden calf are going to be cut off. I don't know if we can find it for you before we go here. But let's see, where is it now? Where's the golden calf episode? Can you find it for me?
32.
Where?
32.
32, okay. Let's just look at that quickly. See, it's in the middle of all this legislation. When the people were up there, they gathered around Moses, gathered around Aaron, and asked him to construct them this thing. And he is willing to do it. And when he comes back down, Moses is really angry. These tablets were the work of God. And Joshua heard what was going on in the camps. Now Joshua is introduced here, and we hadn't been introduced to him before. He's Moses' servant. He's the righteous servant. And then, when Moses saw the people were out of hand, line 25, for Aaron had allowed them to lapse into idolatry, he stood at the gate of the camp and shouted, "Who is for the Lord and who is not? Gird on your sword," and so on. And Levi and their sons carried out his commands. They're the lower priesthood, you see. And they win consecration for this slaughter that they carry out in the camp. And then he says in 33, "It's the man who has sinned against me that I shall blot out from my book." Well, who sinned against him if not Aaron? I mean, Aaron is the principal one in this particular story. I'm not for it. I'm just saying there's an anti-Aaron story put in the middle of all this pro-Aaron material. So I think Exodus swings back and forth between anti-Aaron, pro-Moses, pro-Aaron material, aside from all the rest of the issues. But I think that's what's really interesting about the book of Exodus, all the swings that are going on. Now you'll read it more carefully, and next time I'll finish the material that I didn't cover over. See you. Go on to the book of Joshua. If you're finished with that, read the book of Judges.